All right, welcome back to another episode of the Erickson Brothers Podcast, where we discuss the possible returns to life's investments, and as we'll break down a few different things that are ranging from faith, family, fitness, and finances. We are back getting into another good routine. We were able to meet last week, and now we're here again. So. Uh, Jeff, how are things? How was your week?
Dude, everything's been going really good. Weather is just prime right now in San Diego, so we're crushing like 70 degrees and sunny almost every day now, which is just amazing. Um, yeah, great Sunday so far. Went to church. We had a little summer church carnival-esque thing with food trucks and bouncy castles and stuff. So I was helping set that up and everything, and yeah, just getting ready for the week ahead, but everything's been going well.
Nice, nice. Our weather here in New York's been hot and gross. I walk outside and my back starts to stick to my shirt, and then the office is 65 degrees, so it's a pendulum of temperatures and atmospheres that I'm dealing with on a daily basis. It's really tough.
What is the best season in New York City?
Fall.
Fall. All right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that. So I mean, fall and spring for sure. Summer gets too hot, but there's so many things to do in the summer too. Like it's went to the Belmont. There's a lot of concerts. You can drink outside on a roof. Uh, so there's always a lot of fun things to do in the summer. It's just weather wise, it's definitely spring or fall.
There you go.
Mhm.
Sweet, sweet. Well, jumping right into it today, what do you got for our first topic?
Well, the Supreme Court recently ruled against affirmative action, saying that race could not be a determining factor in the college admissions process. And I was wondering what your take on that was. It was the Supreme Court decided 6-3 in favor of that. The majority opinion, basically the majority opinion talked about how we should be looking at people based on their merit and their character over something like race. And then the dissenting opinion mentioned how the opportunities that minorities have are just less, and we can't ignore that. And education is a way to uh, um, create opportunity for those people. So, wondering what your thoughts are surrounding it, and
Yeah.
if you had an opinion, what would you do?
Um, so yeah, very interesting topic. I don't think race or skin color or ethnicity should play a factor in at all. But I mean it's tough because then you like I can see why they put it in the first place, but at the same time, like if you want it, if you want equality, if your goal is equality, then your goal should be equality. Right? Every single person should have an equal opportunity of being viewed by the school for their skill set and what they can bring and their ability and all that. Um, but I know you were actually a subject matter expert and you were a plaintiff with your undergrad experience. Um, because correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were applying to Yale, there was an unfair advantage for white males. Is that right?
No,
What
so
was that?
no, well, the current Supreme Court case was specifically pointing out Harvard and North Carolina, but there's been issues, or depending on how you look at it, there's been legal precedents surrounding Yale specifically, about affirmative action because Harvard, Yale, North Carolina, among other schools, do take into uh, account race during their admissions process. Um, but I guess for both of us being white males, the affirmative action, um, the majority opinion argues that affirmative action actually hurts a certain applicant pool, which would be white people. It would be Asians. Traditionally, traditionally speaking, it would hurt those groups. So when I was at Yale, there was they were going through this. I don't think it went to the Supreme Court case, but I think there were some like legal ramifications, and
Yeah.
I think Yale got sued. But I was not specifically involved in that case. I think it's no, I was very far removed.
There you go. And do
So
you
you,
do you think they made the right decision, the Supreme Court?
I do not. I think the way I actually wrote a paper on this in high school about affirmative action, and I think that private universities, the Yales, Harvards, Calvins, Colorado Wesleyan skiing university, I don't know, whatever you pick it, any Pepperdine, any private school, I think their admissions body can accept whoever they want to. I don't think they should be mandated by the state. I think if they want to look at race into account for their admissions, they should be able to. I think if they wanted the best baseball players, they could get the best baseball players. If they wanted the tallest class, they could get the tallest people. If they want if they want geographic diversity, if they want racial diversity, I think private universities should have the right to accept and reject anyone they want for whatever reason they want.
I like
I
that.
think public universities, there's that I don't know exactly how it works for public university for funding, but I think since public universities are a place for higher education, there should be a an aim or designation towards furthering education and creating experiences that create equal opportunities. But so I don't think they should have the bandwidth to accept whoever they want. I think they should hire the best candidates um, based on merit to create the best opportunity for the entire group, for their entire student body. And we have found, we as in society have found that there are actual benefits in productivity and in learning experiences when you have a diverse group of people, that the actual like the diverse mindset and the diverse background actually lead to higher productivity, and it's not just a check the box thing of meeting a quota. No, like the different backgrounds, different uh, different experiences actually lead to better teams. And I think when a student body or when an admissions department is looking at that, they need to look at, okay, how can we create the best student body? I think when it comes to a football team, you're not going to get 60 of the best quarterbacks. You need two or three quarterbacks, you need wide receivers, you need linemen. And I think the the range of types of people you need for a team are the best teams have the best range, the best range possible to fit that need. And I think that diversity actually creates a better productivity for everyone involved. Um, so I think that includes like diversity of thought as well. I think in a lot of higher education systems, we see that if you are more politically leaning to the left, you're going to get better test scores, and teachers are going to like you. And if you have political leanings to the right, you're going to get a little um, uh, judgment for that. So I think we should really encourage diversity from all sides. We can't just say skin color is the only thing that diversity has. No, there's diversity of experience, diversity of thought, diversity of beliefs, and all of that leads to better outcomes, better teams, better productivity. So that's where I fall. I think that's my long-winded answer. And that's for public universities. Private universities, they don't have any mandate to have the best team. I think they should be able to have is whoever they want. If they want to look at diversity, great. If they don't, that's their right. Nobody's forcing you to apply to college.
Yeah, I like that.
Mhm.
I like that a lot. Cool. And is that like implemented starting now? Is that like both for after the Supreme Court decision, that's both now going into public and private universities, they have to implement it?
I don't know. I think that it's it'd be a pretty immediate change. I guess people have already been accepted for the 2023 fall, but I think beyond that, if the Supreme Court rule it, then it would probably be next year or 2 years that that universities will start to follow that. But I don't know how the Supreme Court's going to enforce this. I think it's very authoritarian to say that you can't hire, or you can't hire too. You can't accept a person based on race. Like I think colleges should have those individual freedoms to accept who they feel like will create the best student body. So
Yeah, good point.
yeah.
There you go. I agree with that for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, more freedom. Cool.
Mhm.
Topic number two. Topic number two. I was listening to a podcast and it talked about how being a billionaire is bad, right? And how there actually gets to the point where you have too much money that your life experience actually decreases and the quality of life for your kids goes down as well with too much money. So
Okay.
this is a topic that I know our perspectives probably will change on, as we are the poorest we'll ever be is right this very instant. So what is
Well,
your opinion on having too much money, and do you think there is a point to where it actually decreases the quality of your life?
yeah, I've heard this, that I think um, the return. I don't know what exactly the number is, but the return for more money leading to more happiness is it's a lot lower than one would think. Um, and there's a study on it. I believe it was like $70,000 a year. It was not much money, and they found that after X amount, we'll call it 70, 85. It's definitely not more than 100. They found that the more money you get, the more it does not lead to more happiness. And I think that the thinking around that is once your basic needs are met, then it's the relationships you have, it's the people you're around, um it's the experiences you have within your day-to-day life that lead to happiness. It's not going to be driving to work in a Rolls Royce versus a Camry isn't going to make you happier. It might be cooler, but it definitely is not going to make you happier. They I don't know if this is the same study or a different study, but they found that like things like being involved in a church led to more happiness. They found that things like weather did not lead to happiness. Like people in all things being equal, somebody in Cincinnati, Ohio, and somebody in San Diego, California, are not going to be materially different in happiness based on weather. So they were able to do this study over tens and tens of thousands of people about it, but it kind of broke down the conventional thinking of what really leads to happiness. And I think a billionaire like that is just way out of there. I think that dealing with the amount of money that comes with being a billionaire is it can be stressful, and it can lead
Sure.
to less happiness, I think, because at that point you're managing a fund, you're managing multiple assets, you're managing tons of people, and you can't just turn that off at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock when you go home. Like that is a 24/7 thing. Um, that you're overseeing an empire, and that never goes away. So yeah, I agree. I think it doesn't, but uh then again, like you maybe that that might be the majority, but it's not the exception. So there definitely will be cases when very I bet philanthropic billionaires are very happy. They can build
Hmm.
hospitals, they can build schools, they can do that. But I think it is like a little consuming, because the things you would need to do to get to $1 billion is um, you're probably making a lot of sacrifices in your personal life to make an extra buck. So yeah, I agree. I was wondering, what else did that podcast say?
Yeah. Well, it said that like getting to the point of not being able to worry about discretionary spending. So like looking at the price of a menu, um, judging based on where you live, based on the price of the homes, right? So like getting to the point where you can do what you want and like eat what you want and live where you want. Um, so like having enough money to do that. But they said, right, like quality of life goes down for your kids, like especially if you're you have fame that's attached with the money, then
Hmm.
obviously like if you go to like a restaurant and you're just going to be surrounded by a bunch of people that know who you are, that are coming up and like wanting to take photos or wanting your autograph, whatever it is, think of like a sports player, some musician or whatever. um I think the quality of your life would go down as well with that, with fame. So I think there's a sweet spot, and I think there's a sweet spot of like, and I do think it's more than $70,000 a year, because when you're just making $70,000 a year, like you still have to be on a pretty tight budget. You still have to watch every little dollar you spend. You're still going to have restrictions in what you can do all the time. So
Right, but that they found that those restrictions, those the lift of those restrictions don't lead to more happiness.
right, for
Like
most
that,
people.
this is there. That is the study. They found that, and it's not for every person. Like I'm sure that that number for people is different, but they found that on average, the happiness does not increase with an additional dollar beyond. And again, like I said, I don't know if it was 70,000, or I don't know if it was 80 or
Yeah, no,
90,
I believe it
but
was.
in that range, it doesn't matter, because even though you're watching what you buy at dinner or how often you go on vacation, that doesn't lead to more happiness, or that's what they found.
I wonder how you measure somebody's happiness. Like
I think
how do you measure fulfillment?
it's I think it would be um it's you just ask them, like, you measure happiness by asking someone, are you happy, yes or no, on a scale of 1 to 10. How happy would you say you are? Let's go with 8. Okay, for example, like, how somebody feels about their happiness is the measure. If
Yeah.
someone if somebody feels like a 4, then they're a 4. If somebody feels like a 3 or a 10, then they're a 3 or a 10. And who am I to say that? And somebody's
Yeah.
10 might be different than someone else's 10. But if your thought process is around, oh, I would be a lot happier if blah blah blah, therefore I'm a 6, then you're a 6.
Mhm.
So I think that it is just discretion to the person. So
Yeah, I like that. And it's pretty fascinating. And um yeah, I mean I'm just kind of curious how our thoughts are going to change on that, especially later in life when we we are I guess if we're looking at the base mark of $70,000 a year, I mean, gonna hit that pretty quick. But um, when we like, I'm not at a place right now where I can go to a restaurant and not look at the menu. And I think when I'm there and I can kind of have to not worry about like the little transactions in my life, I personally think that would make me a lot happier. But again, it might not.
but they already did that study and they have found that it doesn't make you happier.
Well, it doesn't make the average person happier. It might make me happier.
Well, that's another fallacy, is that people think they are the exception when they're not. Like, more oftentimes than not, you are in the majority.
Right.
And
By definition.
like, okay, say you're out to dinner, we'll go with that example, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna get the $30 chicken instead of the $70 steak, right? Is that $40 difference making you that much happier? Is it more than double the happiness that you get from the steak than from the chicken? And the answer is no. Like, sure, you might enjoy the steak a little more, but are you going to enjoy it 220% more because you paid 220% more, or whatever be 100, 130, I don't know, whatever it is. The answer is no. Like, marginally, if you tell yourself, oh, I want the steak and I can pay for it, great. That might be 0.1 or 0.2 on the happiness scale, when once you reach that threshold of that number in this study, then the majority of your happiness is going to be from the people that are around you at dinner, the relationships you have, what you did that day, who you were able to spend time with, those kinds of things, not the price of the bill. So
Did you see the movie Air, the Michael Jordan movie Air?
no.
Okay, well, it just made me think of a scene in the movie where Michael Jordan's agent, he super successful guy, he sold his sports agency obviously after Michael Jordan like retired, and like he had a bunch of different clients. He's one of the most successful sports agents in the world, and he sold his like book of business for over $200 million. And they put this in the movie that night he was seen at a restaurant celebrating the win, like celebrating it by himself. Like he was eating dinner by himself to celebrate selling his company. And he didn't have a family, he didn't have a wife. And they're just like saying that like it's kind of sad to see him celebrate one of the biggest things in his life, selling this company for over $200 million, eating dinner by yourself. And I think that's a great example of, wow, trade $100 million for friends and family. I think that'd be a pretty, I mean, that would make sense to me, but
I mean, in that moment, I'm sure he would trade $200 million for friends and family
right. So
because like what's it even matter?
yeah, yeah.
and and I don't know. I didn't read the movie. I didn't watch the movie. I don't know this person. I don't know if there's any validity to the story, but um, yeah, it makes you think. It's like, what are you really trading? Like, sure, money, but like, would you trade $200 million for 30 years of your life where you could have grown a family?
Hmm.
Like, that's not, you can't really put a number value on that.
No, no, not at all. All right, number 3. What you got?
Topic number 3. So I don't know if we've talked about it on this podcast at all, but oftentimes, um, you've mentioned to me definitely outside the podcast is when you're in your life and you start seeing the same thing uh, pop up multiple times from unrelated events,
Hmm.
like passages in the Bible that you hear from one sermon and then you read about it in a devotional and then you see it, and then one of your friends talks about it, blah blah blah. Are you following?
Yep, I'm tracking.
Yes. So the past, I don't know how long it's been. We'll call it month and a half, 2 months. What's been weighing on my heart is the importance of prayer uh, in life, and just how am I going to personally get better at prayer. So um, that's when you sent me the book to read about meditation, and then I read it with the Christian viewpoint of prayer and how important it is and the similarities that Jesus did in prayer. And then the whole situation with that led to lots of prayer. And um, then additionally, I kept on hearing about Psalms 23. And I probably heard it 2 or 3 times. Mom mentioned it. One
Yeah,
of my friends mentioned it, and I I just decided to dive into it one morning and just see like, okay, what really is Psalms 23? Like, what is God trying to tell the reader? And we know it's a Psalm of David, so we know that David's writing it um in a, I don't know if he's writing it to anybody or to himself, but just I decided to break it down, and I'll just go through it what my takeaways were. Um, so the I'll go high level overview, and then you can ask me questions. But um, the first few verses, David is talking about what the Lord does, saying like the Lord is my shepherd. He leads me down green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. Those are verses 1 to 3. And the only thing that we are called as individuals to do in those verses is just I shall not want. And it made me start to think, it's like, okay, this is God's going to take care of the green pastures. He's going to take care of the quiet streams. All we need to do is just acknowledge that he's our shepherd and we shall not want. And that phrasing kind of continues in verse 4, and um then it goes like, okay, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So in my mind, we saw a little shift from 1 to 3, and then even into 4. Um, and I think it's kind of, here we are, all the 1 to 3, we're talking about all these things that God does for us. And then for what we do to ourselves, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil, right? Like, I think that one of the questions I had in reading it was, does God, does he lead us to the valley of the shadow of death? Are we called as believers to go um, to difficult places and um, be a light and be stronger? Or do we go into the valley of the shadow of death because we're stupid sheep? And even though God has a plan, we are sinful in nature and we deviate from that plan. So I was wondering about that.
Okay, I'll share my quick take on that. I think
Okay.
everyone goes through the valley of the shadow of death. I think simply being a human on Earth and existing
Yeah.
means that some part in your journey will be a valley, and
Hmm.
it will be the shadow of death where there's no hope. It doesn't look like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Um, you're fighting demons. There's battles internally and externally. I think I think everyone is going to see that in some parts of their life. Um, so that's what I'd say. You can keep going.
Okay. So verse 5 and 6, my mind, where we see another shift, and I'm thinking, okay, like, if we're in the same setting, if we're in the valley of the shadow of death, verse 5, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. So I'm I took that as, okay, we're still in the valley of the shadow of death.
Hmm.
We sit down at a table and God prepares it for us. And we are in the presence of our enemies, and God just says, "Hey, here's this table. I have it prepared for you. Don't fear. I've got it all taken care of." And I'm just picturing somebody at a table, and there's just like chaos going around everywhere, and they're in the valley of the shadow of death. And then God just leads us to this table, and he says it's all going to be all right. And one of the later in verse 5, he says, my you anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. So even in the valley of the shadow of death, when there's chaos around, in the presence of enemies, our cup is overflowing from God. And I was like, okay, how cool is that? Even in this dark place, we can be more than filled up, let's say. Um, we can have more than we need. Our cup can have more than it can hold. And it's just, that's God preparing that table and knowing that we can just be content in at that table, even though we're in the presence of our enemies. Like, it's not perfect, or I don't know if that's the right word. It's not heaven, but God has it taken care of.
It's not you're not going through some drive-through just swinging by grabbing food and then dipping. You're
Right. Like, I think I just picture like that this person at this table in the valley of the shadow of death is just completely at peace. They have more than they want. They're just at this table.
um,
And it brings us to verse 6. At the end of verse 6, or I'll read all of verse 6. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So now we're no longer in the valley of the shadow of death, and we're in the house of the Lord. And if God can make our cup overflow in the presence of our enemies in the valley of the shadow of death, what can what are the limits of his love and his grace and his compassion? And what does that say about God's character? If he does that in the valley of the shadow of death, what can we do when we're in the house of the Lord forever? Like, how we're no longer at the table, we're at the table in the dining room in the house, with the kitchen and the living room and the bedroom and the bathroom, and everything is in the house of the Lord. Like, what are the possibilities are endless, and I think it just like speaks to the vastness of who of of who God is, the power that He is. That like if our cup can overflow in the valley of the shadow of death, what can be possible from us for us in the house of the Lord? So
That's fascinating. It's almost like I'm only now looking at it from this perspective. It's almost like a journey that David is taking us on, right? We're starting next to the quiet waters and on the green grass, and then as we follow our shepherd, so to speak, as the shepherd leads the sheep, he takes us to his table that he has prepared for us in the shadow of death and the
mhm,
valley of the shadow of death, right? So we go from the streams to the valley of the shadow of death where he has a table, and then after that we go to the house of the Lord. So it's like an interesting progression.
it's like a progression of the Christian faith.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's almost a progression of like trusting God every step of the way.
Hmm. And how He's going to be with us, but we just trust the entire way. Um, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm looking at this correctly, but I just thought it was so cool. Like, okay, our cup overflows in the presence of enemies in the valley of the shadow of death. What can be possible when we dwell in the house of the Lord forever? Like that. I don't know that.
Yeah.
So,
Eternal bliss,
so
eternal happiness. Yeah, that's good. That's a good way of thinking about it.
mhm.
And we won't know until we get there, right? Because there's no sin at all. Like we've never experienced anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. But as Christians, we do know we're going, and we do know that it is it is holy and it is perfect, and like that's
Well, it makes you think like too, if you know at the if you've kind of like read the table of content, so to speak, like you know what the end destination is, you can have more comfort in the shadow of death when it comes.
mhm.
And maybe you could even like look for the table, so to speak, right? So
Oh
what does that mean? Like, let's say you get laid off work, you get divorced, you start drinking again, whatever it is, like you start to have all these things come up in your life um, that are kind of like spiraling down into just like your life is falling apart in your hands, whatever that mean, right? You're entering the shadow of death, but to be able to stop and to look for a table that's prepared for you that the Lord is sitting at, I mean, I think that could be powerful as well.
yeah, that's a really good point, and it yeah, and it's there, and he doesn't prepare the table and the enemies aren't gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not perfect in the shadow of death by any means, but just the calmness that we can have knowing that there's a table prepared for us even in hard times, and and our cup overflows at that table. It's not half full, it's not full, it's overflowing.
More than enough.
Yep, yep.
Love it. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see where what other new things God's going to reveal in your life when it comes to prayer. One thing I've done, one thing that I've changed how I pray is in the morning I have my prayer journal and I write out, I say Jeff, and then I put like a colon, and then I put what my thoughts are, kind of like a chat, and then I put my pen down and I meditate and I'm like, all right, and I try to hear for God's response.
Mhm.
I try to listen to him and I try to hear what he has to say, and then I'll write down what I'm hearing from him, and then I'll stop and like I'll reflect on it. So I try to my prayer life has shifted to more of a conversation between me and God, and that's really helped me. Um, that's helped me get closer to Him is writing out what I think He's saying back to me.
Did um and you listened to that sermon I sent you. Um Was that last week or was that 2 weeks ago?
That was 2 weeks ago. It was really good. It was from the Baptist church. And yeah, it talked about like having a strong foundation in God and having
Okay,
having
so listen to the one that they put out last week,
okay, the next one in the series.
because it's all about God is speaking to you. Are you listening?
Yeah.
God's never not speaking. It's are we listening?
I don't I think sometimes God's quiet.
Yeah, but
I
are we
think
listening to that too?
right. I saw this meme on Instagram and it said remember that if you're getting tested, he goes, if you're getting tested and you're not hearing anything from God, it said remember that the teacher is always silent during a quiz. And I was like, oh, I'm like, that's an interesting way to look at it. Like the teacher is always quiet when you're getting tested. So it's like if you're in this test of your life and you're not hearing anything from God, like that's like how tests work. Is like and I was like, oh.
Fair enough. Fair enough. This, yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Maybe I don't know if that has any validity or not, but makes
yeah. I don't know. I mean, possibly, and that is how like that is doesn't not make sense. But yeah, that one of the things that was on my heart recently is just reflecting on all the things and all the people that I'm grateful for. And uh I wrote this down and there's just like 3 pages of people that I was grateful for. Everybody from friends to Bible study leaders, like anybody, Morgan Wallen, anybody I could think of. Peloton workouts, like going, like even friends that I play basketball with, just how grateful I am for them. And that was, I wrote all that down June 9th. And then dad has an accident June 10th. And June 11th is when people found out and started reaching out to me and saying, like, hey, man, praying for you, praying for your family, praying for your dad. Like, let me know if I can help in any way, that kind of thing. And I got just a flood of text from people that loved me and people that supported me. And I think that was God responding. He pretty much just said like, oh Matt, like you might think that you have a lot of people in your life that you're grateful for, but like you have no idea how much love people have for you. Just like just wait to see what I can do. And he used dad's accident as a way for for me to be reinforced by like how grateful I really should be and not take it for granted.
he
Um,
he
because
over he overfilled your cup.
he did, yes, yeah, in in a dark time when things were not looking good for dad and for our family. Just 2 days before, I had talked about how grateful I was because truly everything was going so well in life. Um, and in on the surface, or just like I don't know how to say it, but things were good at work. Just very grateful for
Conditions
people,
are good.
and conditions are good. People, yeah. And then I was like, wow, God, I'm so grateful for everything that you've done. And then we get into the situation with that, and he's like, oh, like you have no idea how grateful for you are. Like that's like what you thought is just like a small snippet of what's really going on, like what you really should be grateful for, and it's the people that reach out and tell tell them that they love you and tell them that they're praying for you. Um, and that's really it. It's the cup overflowing in the shadow of death.
Yeah,
So
going back to that happiness thing, man. Like you couldn't pay an amount of money. Like you couldn't give me an amount of money that would be worth more than the support and the love and the prayers from the most important people in our life. So
Hmm.
um yeah, that's a good point for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we should wrap it up here. But
Good. One quick ending thought in regards to investing time and money. One quick thought. What do you got?
I think it's all we've talked about, just like how important relationships are, and like put your money into the people you care about, put your time into the people you care about. I found that it's always willing to spend an extra dollar for friends, for family, for people that love you, and also for people that God loves. So,
Yeah.
um,
And investing your time in God as well, right? Because you want to make sure you can find that table really quick when you're in the valley.
yeah, yeah, I love that. It's like, hey, when you're in the valley, like there's a table prepared. You better be able to find it. So,
Yeah. There we go. Sweet, bro. Well, nice chatting with you again today, and we'll call it good.
all right.
Peace.